Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for September 26, 2025. This afternoon, we're going over the latest on Hurricane Humberto, which is rapidly intensifying and is probably going to approach major hurricane intensity later today. And we're also going to go over the latest on 94L and all of the models and everything you need to know, especially if you are in the southeast and you are watching 94L, as it's looking even more likely today that this is going to be a major player for the southeast as we head into early next week, and of course closing out the weekend. So let's start off with the National Hurricane Center right now with the latest that's going on in the Atlantic. Obviously, we have Hurricane Humberto. Right now, maximum sustained winds at 90 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure of 979 millibars. But this is very likely to become a major hurricane. Again, I think this will probably happen by later today, as I'll show you with the satellite imagery in just a little bit. Humberto already has a clearing eye, so definitely on its way to strengthening. And obviously, the National Hurricane Center does forecast that this will be a major hurricane, especially by the weekend. And then we have Gabrielle, which is now a post-tropical cyclone. I think it was already a post-tropical cyclone yesterday, but the last advisory has been issued on Gabrielle, brought impacts to the Azores, and probably the remnants of whatever's left over from Gabrielle will bring impacts to Europe. So please keep in mind of that, especially if you are in Europe, especially in Spain or Portugal. Gabrielle obviously no longer a tropical system, but again, these designations between tropical and post-tropical, they don't really mean much in terms of distinguishing the impacts, because impacts will still be the same, still probably going to bring lots of heavy rain and gusty winds to Europe, which obviously is a nuisance, and it did so as well for the Azores, even though it was already a post-tropical system. So keep in mind of that when it comes to Gabrielle. But then the main player for the next week here in the Atlantic, the main area to watch, Invest 94L, and it is now almost a sure thing that it is going to develop. Chances are 90-90 for both 48 hours and 7 days. And the National Hurricane Center is saying that this is going to be one to watch for Bahamas and potentially the Southeast. And they even say in the advisory here, if you read the text, it says tropical storm watches or warnings could be required for portions of the Bahamas, and advisories on a potential tropical cyclone could be issued as early as later today. So that means we probably will be doing another update later tonight if the National Hurricane Center initiates something for a potential tropical cyclone. And it makes sense because this is likely going to form over the Bahamas, so will definitely bring impacts to the Bahamas, but then we are looking at a potential bullseye for a landfall somewhere along the southeast coast, specifically along the Carolinas coast, and it's looking increasingly likely, given the model runs today, which I'll go over in a little bit, that is probably what the situation will be with 94L. But really quickly in the Eastern Pacific, just to give you an idea and to tell you that there is something happening there. Obviously, all of our attention is right now focused on the Atlantic, but there is something in the Eastern Pacific, Hurricane Narda. But this is going to move out to sea, not really going to affect anybody. In fact, I'll show you with the track here. Going to remain a hurricane up until tomorrow, then weaken to a tropical storm by Sunday, and then by early next week dissipate. So no need to worry about Narda, just letting you know that it is in the Eastern Pacific and something is active there, because why not? But let's move on now to, actual things that I think all of you probably care about. First of that being Hurricane Humberto, and boy, has this storm really come together. Now has a clearing eye, and because of that, probably on its way to becoming a major hurricane. Obviously, as I just said, the latest National Hurricane Center advisory as of 2 p.m. Or 11 a.m., I think, because they're not releasing intermediate advisories yet because there are no watches and warnings in effect for Humberto. But this is very likely becoming a major hurricane very, very soon. I think probably by later this afternoon, Maybe not 5 o'clock, but definitely by the 11 p.m. advisory tonight. This will probably be a major hurricane, and this is going to strengthen quite rapidly. The National Hurricane Center, I think, forecast. Let's actually see what the forecast from the National Hurricane Center is. I think it's a forecast discussion, and they forecast a peak roughly 48 hours from now. So I think this probably is Sunday afternoon. They forecast a peak at 145 miles per hour. So this might also, once again, be a decently strong Category 4 storm, just like Gabrielle was. And just to show you once again, the National Hurricane Center forecasts track. Going to become a major hurricane, and then will probably remain one for several days up until early next week, until it finally weakens Tuesday and Wednesday. And this is going to happen as it curves on off to the north and then to the northeast. Probably staying away from Bermuda, but Bermuda is in the cone of uncertainty. And must I remind you that if you are in the cone, you should be watching out very closely for potential impacts and for potential track changes that could, potentially bring the track right over you, because the forecast cone is merely, or the cone of uncertainty is merely a cone of where the potential track might be of a system. Definitely does not represent the impacts that might happen, but I will say that Bermuda, regardless, even if it won't deal with the direct landfall from Humberto, should monitor the progress for potential impacts from rain bands, gusty winds, maybe still some tropical storm force gusts might occur from Humberto. But again, for those along the East Coast, no need to worry about Humberto. This is not the storm that we're going to be watching, especially for the East Coast. It is going to be Invest 94L, which is looking increasingly likely that it will be a potentially hurricane landfall along the southeast coast. And here's the latest satellite look of it right now. And obviously it doesn't look like much, and you're wondering, why is this going to be a hurricane landfall for the southeast? But believe me, this is going to come together a lot over the next 24 to 48 hours. And I'll show you right now really quickly, since I should have done it earlier, but here's the latest of something that was released today from the National Hurricane Center. And this is a list of all of the aircraft recon missions that they are going to be doing for 94L from today and tomorrow. Well, I think all of these are for tomorrow. And I believe there are about 7 missions on here. So pretty much, this is going to be a system that we are really going to have to watch quite a bit. And I think that is very much the case, especially when you see that the National Hurricane Center has 7 recon flights scheduled for 94L, which definitely means that they are taking this system very, very seriously, because once again, it is looking very likely that this will be a potential hurricane impact to the United States. Doesn't look like much right now, though, and obviously still does not have a fully closed low-level center yet, which is obviously why this is not yet designated as a tropical system. But the latest ASCAT data over 94L, and this has been posted roughly about 2 hours ago from the NHC TAFB branch. I think this is the Tropical Analysis and Forecast branch. So this is pretty much the branch that looks at specifically tropical weather currently. You get what I mean. But they say that the latest ASCAT satellite data did indicate that there is a sharp surface trough with 94L. So that this does have some sort of spin going for it in the low levels of the atmosphere. And another good way to look at it is at the 850 millibar vorticity chart, which is a chart that, if you've been following me for the last several months, you know I love looking at this chart. My favorite chart, as somebody likes to say, if you know who I mean. But this really is one of my favorite charts. And this shows the amount of spin in the atmosphere, especially over a specific area. And you can see here just off the coast of Cuba, and in the far southern Bahamas, we have quite a bit of vorticity coming together here, and not quite defined yet. Again, going back to this tweet here, 2 hours ago, they said that we only have a sharp surface trough with 94L, so not quite yet enough to be able to designate this as a fully tropical system, which is why, if you saw the National Hurricane Center bulletin that we just talked about minutes ago, they said that we're probably going to get a potential tropical cyclone designation this afternoon. But this will definitely come together, and I will say this definitely looks a little bit more organized. Not like the signature that we have here, for instance, where we see this very, very potent round, all curled up in a ball signature like we have with Humberto. But it is starting to get there, and we're probably only about a day or so away from this organizing and developing and becoming a tropical system. And when it does develop, probably looking at, once again, all of the model guidance now today. I showed you the model guidance yesterday, and most of them agreed on a landfall heading directly into the southeast, and the models still show that today. Although, we still have a little bit of uncertainty with the models, because some of them that show this, especially moving very quickly, show this making a nosedive slam dunk right into the southeast, especially along the South Carolina coastline. And again, I would not be, too particular about what specific area of the coastline is going to get hit yet, because once again, 94L has not yet developed. So, we cannot be too sure about what specific area, what specific town along the coastline will get hit yet. That's really only something we can do and start predicting about a day or so before landfall, if there is a landfall, because again, there are some of these models here, as you can see, that kind of show another scenario that is still possible with 94L, that if it takes a little bit of a slower time to develop, that it might begin to slow down as it heads towards the coastline, because it'll eventually start feeling the influence from Humberto. And Humberto might eventually start trying to drag it out to sea, and that's what some of the other models still show right now. So there's still a lot of bit of uncertainty. Still not 100% certain about a direct landfall along the southeast coast, but you got to look at where the majority of the models are, and I can already tell you there are some very important models. I see the GFS, which is the red line here, and that's the AVNI. That's at least what is labeled for the GFS on this plot. And then we have the HMON, the HWRF, the HAFS models. So pretty much the GFS and all of the global models right now or the GFS and all of the hurricane models right now have a direct landfall occurring along the southeast coast, especially over South Carolina. So when we have that kind of model consensus from important models like the GFS and the HWRF and the HAFS, you would assume that it is more than likely that we will be looking at a southeast coast landfall, at least as of right now, for 94L. And intensity-wise, a lot of the models here, especially with some of the hurricane models, beginning to agree on potentially this being a hurricane as well. Some of the plots here that you see, especially with some of these models, I think the HAFS is in here, the HWRF. So pretty much, again, all of the hurricane models showing as well that this could potentially strengthen to a hurricane. And we'll see exactly how the intensity pans out, because that also kind of depends on how it develops as well and how it interacts with Humberto. But there are some models that show this strengthening to a hurricane. So the chance of this once again being a hurricane landfall, not just a landfall, but even a hurricane landfall for the southeast, is also still on the table as of today. And I think even if you look at the 12Z GFS here, which let's just roll through it, and you see here, develops roughly within the next 24 hours. So looks like probably by tomorrow morning we're going to be looking at this potentially actually beginning to develop and come together, and we'll probably get a tropical cyclone or named storm designation tomorrow. Really comes together here, hour 30, and this is tomorrow afternoon. And then from there onward, it strengthens and really, strengthens and tightens up, especially as it heads towards the coastline here. And this is landfall that the GFS shows roughly around 90 hours out. So the GFS takes the more quicker scenario in which this develops and moves very quickly to the northeast, and that it gets to the coastline by around Tuesday morning, and probably has it as a pretty decent hurricane. That definitely looks like a hurricane on the vorticity signature to me. So GFS still showing the scenario of a potential hurricane landfall along the southeast Carolina coast. But then, if you look here, once it makes landfall, notice what happens, especially over around the day or so portion after it makes landfall. It stalls over the inland portions of the southeast. And I mentioned this yesterday, but this is also going to be another situation that we're going to have to monitor very, very closely, because we've been in this situation before where storms come in and they make landfall and then they stall and produce lots and lots of heavy rainfall. And obviously with that, we get lots of flooding, flash flooding, and, deaths from drowning, and just makes everything a living nightmare. And I mean, again, going back to storms like Hurricane Harvey, produced lots of flooding rain over Texas. We had record rainfall because Harvey made landfall and then stalled over Texas for a few days. Now, not sure if this makes landfall that it's going to stall as long as Harvey did, but certainly looks like at least the energy from whatever will be left of 94L and probably Imelda at this point, because that's what is more than likely going to be. I mean, that is the next name on the list after all. But not sure if it's going to, last as long as Harvey inland, but the energy remains. I guess I could say it does remain around the southeast for quite a bit of time. So you can bet, even as we get towards Thursday, you could still see some of the remnant energy on vorticity here for whatever will be left of 94L before it finally kind of begins to move along and then probably brings rain throughout the rest of the South. And that brings us to roughly a week out. So this week is definitely going to be a very long week coming up. And I also want to show you the European. Let me actually show you the EC Fast, because this is the European model, but it loads it much faster. Although it kind of loads it in larger chunks instead of doing the frames every 3 to 6 hours like the regular European does. The EC Fast only loads the frames, I should say, every 24 hours, but it runs it quicker, so I guess I'm going to use it for right now since the 12Z European on this run is already out. So this develops over the weekend and then intensifies quite quickly. You can see here just Tuesday morning, just off the coast of South Carolina, and then has a situation where I guess it moves quickly, but then starts slowing down right before it makes landfall instead of slowing down right after it makes landfall, as I guess it starts to feel the impact from Humberto and tries to drag itself out to sea as Humberto goes out to the north here, but eventually ends up stalling right along the coastline and then moves inland after that. So yet another situation where we see stalling along the coast, and even this scenario too here on the European would probably bring quite a bit of heavy rainfall here. And in fact, I'll actually show you what the Climate Prediction Center, and this is the Weather Prediction Center, never mind. But this is the Weather Prediction Center forecast for the next 7 days when it comes to rainfall. And they represent exactly what I'm warning warning about, especially here in the southeast. Look at how much rainfall is forecasted, especially, well, pretty much for the entirety of North Carolina and South Carolina, but really maxes out, especially right along the coast. And these values are going to change, especially as the track changes or maybe doesn't change with 94L, but easily large portions of the Carolinas probably going to get at least several inches of rainfall, and especially closer to the coast, probably going to see more. In fact, we might even see areas as high as a foot of rain, if not more. And I'm mentioning this because, as I've said before, and I will say it again, rainfall is the #1 killer when it comes to a tropical cyclone. And I've seen these situations multiple times before where we've had landfalls and then these storms would just stall out and bring a lot of rain. And we've even seen the situation quite a lot this year with heavy rainfall events, not even related to tropical cyclones, and they were already devastating. So this is really a situation that we're going to have to watch very, very closely here with 94L over the next several days. And we'll definitely be getting more information on potential impacts to the Carolinas, especially in terms of rainfall, even storm surge as well. And we're probably going to be getting more of that information, especially if and when we do get a post-tropical cyclone, or not post-tropical, potential. Sometimes you get the names mixed up a little bit, but if and when we do get a potential tropical cyclone designation later today, which by the sound of the National Hurricane Center outlook from 2 o'clock on 94L, it looks very well likely that we will get a potential tropical cyclone designation. And with that, we'll probably get loads more data and probably even specific forecasts on rainfall as it pertains to 94L across the southeast. So lots of more data is coming later today, and I'm definitely going to keep on top of it. And as I said before, we might even do another video later today. So I'm going to wrap this video up for you right now, get it out to you online, but stay tuned because we are probably going to have another video discussion on 94L later tonight. And then we'll probably go over more of the specifics on whatever the National Hurricane Center may directly be forecasting on 94L from their potential tropical cyclone designation, as well as whatever watches and warnings will probably be issued, which I'm sure there will probably be quite a few. So make sure to stay tuned for all of that. Things are really beginning to ramp up here. And if you are along the southeast coast, especially along the coastal Carolina region, please start preparing now. Start getting your first aid kit ready. Start looking at evacuation plans. But now is the time to start preparing. Don't have to take action just yet, as once again, we don't really have any watches or warnings or any orders being released right now on the system. But start watching, start being vigilant, start preparing now, because things are starting to uptrend here when it comes to 94L. But with that being said, that's going to be all for this video. That's going to be all for now for this afternoon. But once again, stay tuned for another video update tonight. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and also follow me on Twitter too, at Danilo Evangelista, same name as I have here on YouTube, and I'll be posting more updates on Twitter as well throughout the rest of the day too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.